Hey bookworms, welcome back to my channel and to another review. Today we are back with the one and the only Stephen King, and today we're going to discuss his latest book, at least for the time of filming this video, The Institute. This book is about a 12-year-old boy called Luke who has a minor superpower, as you do, but his entire world collapses one day when he's kidnapped by strangers and brought to the Institute, a secret facility with other kids also with superpowers. But this is no Professor X's academy, because the adults who are running this place seem to despise children, and Luke and the other kids there are being vigorously and aggressively tested and basically tortured almost every single day. Luke befriends some of the other kids there, and pretty soon they realize that this place is very dangerous. The adults there don't really care for their well-being, and their only solution and chance of survival is to find a way to escape the Institute. Now, to those of you who are familiar with Stephen King books, you probably think that this doesn't really feel like your normal, typical Stephen King book. And you're right. Other than some similar elements to the book It didn't really feel like I'm reading a typical Stephen King book. Now, is it a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it really depends on how you look at it and whether you like Stephen King or not. I said many times in the past that with Stephen King, I really love some of his books and I really hate some of his other books, but I really enjoyed reading The Institute. It was very interesting, very fast read, despite the fact that the book is pretty long. I really love the characters. I didn't feel disappointed at all from the villains, and there are also some really cool, crazy southern small town stereotypes that I really loved. In addition, the book lacks some of Stephen King's more annoying tropes. For example, he has a tendency to drag his book with really long inner monologues, description, backstories, some of them are of characters that are really not relevant to the plot. You don't get this here. I mean, the book is long, but things are actually happening. He also has a tendency to over-sexualize his characters and using gore and sex and swear words just to show how edgy it is. I mean, this is my opinion. This is kind of the feeling that I got from his book. And again, you don't get this here, at least to some extent, and I will get more into it once I get into the negatives. Basically, what we have here is a very interesting, imaginative, yet very darkly realistic story about friendship and bravery, where the kids do save the day, but actually it felt more realistic than, say, one of those dystopian futures where horny teenagers are the only ones who don't, I don't know, conform to society norms and stuff, and therefore they're the only one who saved the universe. This is not one of those cases. And come to think of this, the way that I feel about this book, combining with how I love The Outsider, another one of Stephen King's recent works, make me think that I really like better the style that he adopted in later years, as opposed to his famous classical older style. That's at least my opinion. And similarly to The Outsider, which I, by the way, reviewed, make sure to check it out, it will be down below. But similarly to The Outsider, one of my favorite things about The Institute was the characters. The kids, for the most part, felt very realistic. The adults, well, they were pretty much inhumanly cruel, but I guess that's also realistic because some people are just that evil. And then there are also a totally different set of characters, but they're just as relevant. They, as I said, live in a small southern town, and they're so awesome. I love them so much. It's really embracing this gun-wielding, loud, crazy stereotype that people seem to laugh at when they talk about people in the South, but they really embrace it. And as I said, these characters are just the best. They're so awesome, and I really love them. So the book was great, but I still have some points to make regarding some more negative issues. First, let's go back to the kids. I did mention that for the most part they were very realistic, but at some points they did sound like adults desperately trying to sound like children, especially Luke, who, in addition to having some minor superpowers, he's also a genius. I get that, but still some of the conversations in this book remind me too much of the dialogue in the Gilmore Girls, and no one in real life is as quick and witty as them. But that's not actually the big issue here. Remember I said that Stephen King doesn't actually over-sexualize people in this book? I said that it was to some extent, and at the times where he does, it is always the kids who are being overly sexualized, and they're always being overly sexualized, or at all sexualized. They're kids. They're always being sexualized by adults. From a father picking up his son from school and casually looking at the school kids talking, and he remarks on how the girls start developing breasts, to the workers at the institute wondering how many kids there are still virgins and hoping that they're not for their sake. And to remind you, Luke is 12 and the other kids in the institute are between 10 and 14. It didn't really reach the levels of pedophilia or anything, but I still felt it was very inappropriate. The second issue that I have, or maybe it's the third issue, is that we find out at the end that there is this big plan in motion. You know, the reason to why the institute exists and why these kids are being kidnapped and tested and tortured, etc. The problem is that if you just start really to think about this plan, you realize how flawed it is. They talk about making sacrifices for the greater good, but this sacrifice is so unnecessary and really isn't balanced. You know, the torture and the pain that these kids are going through, as opposed to the potential greater good that they're helping. And it doesn't take a genius kid to figure that out. However, this is not one of those cases where the revelation at the end ruins everything, because the journey is the point of this book. So it wasn't such a huge big deal if the destination wasn't all that amazing. But as you can imagine, I crowned this book a success. So far, 2020 has been a good year. Let's hope it continues this way. I am glad to read more of Stephen King's later, newer books. If you have any recommendations, please write it down in the comment section. At the time of filming this video, The Institute is King's latest book, but give him a week, he'll probably write another one by then. But I really love The Institute. If you like Stephen King's ideas, but not the execution, if you like a modern, dark, yet somewhat realistic supernatural novel, I wouldn't really call it a horror. Please give this one a chance if you want to start reading Stephen King's novels, but kind of like afraid of the negative reactions some of them receive. I think this one is a good one to start with, especially if you're not afraid of longer books. And I also think that this book can fit younger readers. I think Stephen King meant for this book to be aimed for younger audience, but not too young or kids without a strong stomach, because remember, these kids in the book are being tortured. But guys, that's it for my review. I really hope you liked it. I really hope you liked this video. If you did, please don't forget to click the like button to show your support, and also don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you dare. And also check out the review of The Outsider, which will be linked down below in the description box. Also, I have a question for those of you who are big Stephen King's fan, or at least those of you who read a lot of books by him. There was clearly a shift in later years in his books. He still writes supernatural things, he still writes about creepy and dark things, but he definitely reduced the amount of over-sexualization of characters, of having each character just swear in pretty much every sentence that they speak, etc. So my question is, do you prefer his older, classical, Carrie, Shining, Pet Sematary kind of works to the newer ones? Or are you like me and you actually like this change in his books and you preferred the newer books? I'm interested to know your answer. So anyway, guys, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.